this movie is just awful. And that's before you get to the blackface of it all.
Fuck you, Neil Diamond. Let's pick these berries.
Join us on a journey as we frolic through fields of filmmaking follies. Join us on this week's episode of Raspberry Fields Forever.
You suck.
What's up, everybody? Jesse Rodden back with another episode of Raspberry Fields Forever. Here with me, as always, is my buddy Kieran Gibbs. Kieran, how you doing today, bud?
I've seen better days. I'll be perfectly honest. I have very few nice things to say today. How are you, Jesse?
You know, I can't complain other than this movie that we watched. It's right in there with contention with Windows. I'm struggling with it a little bit because it is terrible. Neil Diamond is who we're talking about today, and we are talking about the movie The Jazz Singer, a 1980 classic.
The thing with calling it a classic is this is actually a remake of a film from 1929 called The Jazz Singer, and it was the first talkie film where we actually recorded like on-set sound. That's where the crucial connection of why this movie sucks for me comes, because I've had to watch The Jazz Singer. It's basically required reading if you go to film school, but the entire cornerstone of the original movie is around a Jewish man performing blackface for most of the film, and it's not so central in the 1980 reimagination starring beloved Neil Diamond of Silverman, Saving Silverman fame. And there's not a lot of it, but there's still a little blackface. Jesse, you want to get into that?
Yeah, Neil Diamond's probably regretting that decision now to do the blackface. And it really does start off this entire movie. I love the fact that he's in this lounge and he's singing with his crew, which is a crew of black gentlemen, and they don't want to have 3 people singing. They need 4 people for this. So they end up getting Neil Diamond to dress in blackface to play at this, I guess, black club. I find it hilarious that the guy who actually catches him is Ernie Hudson. It's freaking the Ghostbusters guy. I absolutely love that. And then the guy who introduces him on stage is, it's a freaking
John Witherspoon, rest in peace. He recently passed. It makes me incredibly sad because they're incredible actors and they're only in the first 5 minutes, and it boggles my mind. But I think we should probably transition into our first segment. God Save the Screen.
God save the screen!
In God Save the Screen, that's where we talk about the meat and potatoes of the story, because this movie is just wacky and just insane in a lot of ways, including how we start off with this movie with the blackface. And Ernie Hudson calls him out for it and stuff, and they end up getting into a fight in the middle of this club, getting sent to jail. And that's where we're introduced to Laurence Olivier, which, oh my God, I can't believe someone like Laurence Olivier would be in this film of all films.
A man's got to eat, dude, I suppose, because he must have been running low on funds. Having Sir at the beginning of your name doesn't pay your mortgage, but there had to have been another option, Sir Lawrence, because this.
Yeah. Well, and then you could tell that they played the whole scenario for a joke, and it just wasn't a funny joke. There hasn't been an instance where someone has put on blackface and tried to make it as a joke and it really hit.
The only reason they quote unquote got away with it is because that's the cornerstone of the 1929 film. They wanted to, I guess, pay homage. It's like the world's most racist Easter egg.
They play it for a joke and it just doesn't land. And I don't understand why they decided to go that route with it. I understand the whole premise of, paying homage to the original film. But even in 1980, this was really seen as a faux pas. It's just something that you just don't do. This is also the point where we get the only jazz that's in the actual film itself, or I guess remnants of jazz, because it's really not even jazz. Would you consider it jazz?
It's more funk, and it's Neil Diamond funk. The shittiest part of it is it's probably the best or second best song in the movie, because spoiler alert, the music in this movie friggin' sucks, except for maybe the first bit, but that's tainted by the whole racism. And then they start a fight, everybody gets in trouble, and they have to call our main character Jess Robin. His full name is Jesse Robinovich, but he goes by Jesse Robin when he's in blackface. And his father, a cantor in the Hebrew church, comes to bail him out of jail. And we're meant to think that Jess is the protagonist of this movie. But me viewing it, I'm like, yeah, your dad's pissed because, you did a bad thing. And I agree with him. And that's about where you lose me. And this is maybe 4 minutes in.
His dad, the cantor, which a cantor, I guess, or I assume, is just a choir person for the church.
Yeah, they're an official who sings liturgical. Is that how you say that? They sing liturgy and they lead prayer in a synagogue. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. So, I mean, it makes sense for the character that Laurence Olivier is playing. So, Laurence Olivier ends up bailing all the guys out, not just his son, but bailing all the singers out. And that's whenever he realizes that his son has been lying to him and sneaking out to clubs for a few years, or at least a little while, and singing behind his back, not singing in the church, which his father is of the impression that God gave him his voice and he owes his voice to God and the people of the church, and that shouldn't be outside of the church. I don't, I, you know, is that, I don't know much about the Jewish faith to know that, is that something that actually happens? Are cantors not allowed to sing outside of the church? Is that even a thing?
I don't believe it is, particularly in 1980, early 1980 when this was shot. But that's just a factor of the original story that they took, because that's the whole premise, is that they don't want him to go to, I think it's Chicago. They don't want him to go to Chicago and be a stage performer. And so they lift that from the original one. And another thing they lift from it is the strained relationship between the father and the son. Something they semi-lift, and we're about to meet her rather, because after he's bailed out of jail and the dad knows about it, he calls his wife, this poor woman, Leviska. It's semi-changed from the original because Leviska is playing the role of his mother, but it's his wife. Like, it's the exact same role as the original, who misses him and doesn't think he should be sneaking around doing this, but they switch it from the mom to the wife. And if there's something I hate almost as much as blatant racism, it's proving Sigmund Freud right.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, the name's Rivka in this one, the wife's name. And he, I mean, this is what I don't understand about a film like this, is that they try so hard to play him as like this guy who, he's surrounded by temptation and stuff like that once he gets on the road and everything, but they're still playing him to be that good guy, right? Like, he's not going to sleep around on his wife, and he's not going to, do crazy things while he's gone, and which we know is bullshit.
No, he's not going to cheat on her. He's just going to be incredibly emotionally distant. And when he does see her, he's going to kiss her the same way that Titus O'Neil kisses his son.
Is that your plug for your other podcast, Kieran? Your podcast that you're cheating on me with?
Yeah, Card Mark season 2, coming to a theater near you. When we first meet them, at first I think they're brother and sister, I'm being perfectly honest. But then they kiss each other with the most unenthusiastic peck on the lips. Like, I think Neil Diamond's mouth is open and hers is perched up like a cheek kiss. And it just kind of does like a Pac-Man situation. And it's for a second. And they clearly did in ADR. It's just the most unnatural relationship ever. But again, she's literally his mother in the original. And I guess they just wanted him. I'm not even going to try to hop in the director's heads. I'm going to pass the baton on to you. I'm flustered right now.
And the actress that you're talking about, her name is Caitlin Adams. And she pops up throughout the movie because he does play, I guess, his first wife, and she's actually a supportive wife. She's willing to let him go to California. She's willing to let him sneak around his dad's back, even though she thinks it's a bad idea. She's willing to let him do that because she loves him. And so she's not portrayed as this terrible person who's trying to hold him back or anything like that. She's just worried that once he leaves, he won't come back, which is essentially what happens. But she also lets him go.
Yeah, something along those lines, because he initially gets the offer because Bubba's the guy's name. Bubba is his friend who they played with in the club, who told him to dress up in blackface. And Bubba's musical group who they were playing with got a backup gig, and they tried to get Jess to come, but Jess denied it because he, like his father, is a cantor, and he knew that they were going to have such a problem with him leaving. But then Jess gets a call. Bubba was able to play one of his tapes, and they like his tape, and they want him to come out there and help him and help the man record it. I believe his name was
it Keith Lennox?
Yes, it was Keith Lennox. So that's when he decides to take the leap. And I think, wasn't it his wife who encouraged him to do it?
Well, he said he told his wife that he was going to do it and he wants her to be with him. But at the end of the day, he is going to do this. This is his opportunity. This is his shot. And he wants her to be part of it and be there with him. But she's like, I can't. I'm here. She works with the church, and I think she works with the kids, something like that. So she tells him, you have to do this. You have to go because I know that this is your passion. And if you don't do this, you'll be kicking yourself for the rest of your life that you didn't do it. But she also encourages him to tell his father that he's going.
And it's one of them situations where they're a married couple, but they live with the dad. And like Sir Laurence Olivier is pretty he's pretty old, but he's not like demented or anything. It's just one of those situations where apparently you have to have your father in the next room over. Because right before he leaves, there's a scene, and this is another bit of evidence that he's a crappy, emotionally detached husband. Like she is actively trying to sleep with them. And he's just like, I don't feel like it. Which, if my dad were in the next room, I wouldn't sleep with somebody else anyway. But like, that's your wife, dude. She's letting you go to California way. And you're not going to give it a boom boom. What are you doing?
Well, and then he waits until he's at a bar mitzvah to tell his father that he's going away. So he tries to save it for the like most happy occasion that you're supposed to have for a young man to tell his father in a public place that he's going to be leaving, who breaks down in front of everybody. But it's okay because they're going to be singing the classic Jewish song. I can't even think of what it is.
Hava Nagila, I believe.
But they start playing that song just to cheer him up, and he ends up letting him go and says, I just want you to come back, and I believe if you go, then you're not going to come back. And so he leaves basically, and he goes and he meets Bubba in California, and he's staying at this place with I guess that's where he meets Lucy, right? And Lucy meets him at the airport and follows him from there and shows him where he's going to be staying and takes him to Bubba at the recording studio, and it's just kind of showing him around California and giving him the tour. She's also like not hiding it that she is totally into him.
Lucy is actually the name of the actress. The name of the character is Molly. And Lucy is actually Lucy Arnaz. You know who that is?
Well, from the first name and the last name, I would assume one thing. Is it true?
Yep, that's it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so she's the daughter of. Okay, so she's the daughter of Lucy and Desi. Okay, That's awesome. I didn't realize that, but that's a really cool little tidbit.
But yeah, she meets Neil Diamond because she's like his driver when he first pulls into California, and she brings him to Bubba. Like you said, she just starts simping over Neil Diamond pretty much immediately, even though he's pretty open that no, he's not. And she's giving him kisses on the cheek, and you see him like denying her advances, like he's not actively taking her to dinner, but he waits until very late to tell her that he has a wife. He waits until after they go to the studio and they meet with Keith Lennox. And Keith Lennox, in my estimation, he was a very brash British punk rock man with really spiked hair. So I don't know if Billy Idol was big at the time, but I think that might be a dig at Billy Idol. Or it had to be somebody that Neil Diamond worked with in the industry that he just wanted to take a shot at, because Neil Diamond comes in and the guy Keith Lennox is not doing his song right because it's Neil Diamond's song. So he asks if he can sing it for him. Keith Lennox presumably just says,
You've been listening to Raspberry Fields Forever, a Rod and Reels podcast, available on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you receive your podcast. You can go to the website www.rodandreels.com for even more content. Thanks for listening.
It's beautiful, but for whatever reason, it's super off tempo to me. And like I said earlier, in my humble opinion, everything but the Blackface song, unfortunately, blows. Like they're all terrible.
The only song that I, still recollect to this day from this movie is Coming to America. That's the only song from this whole movie that I'm like, oh, I know that song. Of course, I was never a big Neil Diamond fan. I mean, I know him for Sweet Caroline, and I know him for the Saving Silverman movie. That was just a running joke, was them being huge Neil Diamond fans. So, that's really what I know of himself. And the only other thing that I know about him is that he's not a fucking jazz singer.
No, literally, the title was because they borrowed the premise and they wanted to do blackface at the very beginning. That's where the similarities begin and end, because at best he's playing adult contemporary.
So he plays Love on the Rocks and he plays it well. I mean, it's a decent song, I guess. Keith Lennox is just like, yeah, that's great. Now fuck off. And so he presumably fucks off and leaves. And Molly ends up following him, and apparently she had spoke up and said something about it too, and that, you know, the song was really good. She ended up getting fired as well. So now it's Neil Diamond, it's Bubba, it's Molly, it's all of the bandmates in this, I guess, apartment or what have you, and they're just singing songs and they're celebrating, you know, getting fired basically.
You're leaving out the most important piece of dialogue, because after, and you got to know, Jess gets Bubba fired. Like, he didn't do anything wrong. And you can, I don't know if you can tell, but after they get fired, Jess asks, did we just get fired? And they cut back to this shot and the band's got their thumbs up and just smiling and nodding. That was clearly a different shot, because, you know, if you got fired, you wouldn't be smiling. But then they go out to the parking lot and Bubba says something along the lines of, well, we'll do what everybody does when they get unemployed and sacked. We'll have a party. And then, for whatever reason, Neil Diamond starts singing a song about Robert E. Lee, which there's just incredibly problematic subtext in this film throughout the majority of it, and this is no different.
At this point, Neil Diamond is a little bit, I guess, depressed. He's thinking he might end up going home. Well, Molly ends up telling him that, you know, you need to at least give it the 2 weeks, because he was supposed to stay out there for 2 weeks, and you need to shop around your mixtape, because, oh, that was the thing, is that whenever he sang Love on the Rocks, the sound guy actually recorded it and gave it to Molly on the way out the door. Very convenient. He ends up shopping that tape around, or she tries to shop it around for him, and doing it in very like stalker-ish ways. Like, she's popping up in the back of people's cars and acting like she's got a gun on her and stuff like that. And like you said, problematic is an understatement. And he's just like, yeah, it's good. Well, I like it, but I'm gonna have to hear him live if I'm gonna sign anybody, and just kind of like falls for this whole ploy, which is just stupid.
He just magically gets a gig, because I can't even remember the circumstances, because it all just, the crap blurs together. But when she gets back to report to Jess, who is not he's kind of like Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, he just kind of sits there and everything else happens around him. And then he just does quote unquote cool stuff. But she comes back to him with the bad news, because we're essentially at the end of the 2 weeks and she's convincing him to stay longer. And she says something along the lines of, I'll offer you my body. And he doesn't.
I will give you my body.
Yeah, that's exactly how she freaking says it. And again, since Neil Diamond is married and he's a good guy, quote unquote, because you're still living with a woman who's not your wife, and you haven't told, I don't think you're being completely open and honest with your actual wife and talking to her a whole lot, but I digress. They settle for a pizza, and that's supposed to be a good thing. If a woman offers you her body and you're married, you should get the fuck out of there. After they magically decide to stay longer, she gets a phone call almost immediately and just randomly gets a hookup to a, not the show that they wanted, but like a warm-up gig where he is able to play with a band whom we've not met before. And he just magically has all this rhythm with him. And presumably that's like later that week.
She offers him her body and he doesn't take it. And so, but they end up, you know, forming this relationship, and he ends up having to call his dad and his wife and tell them that he's not going to be able to make it home, because this gig led to another gig and led to another gig. So it's just taking more time. And he's telling his wife the entire time, like, oh, you need to come out here, Rivka, like, it's so beautiful and you would love it. And like, I would want you to be here with me. And he ends up getting a gig, and you know, Molly is back there taking photos of him as he's doing his gig. And this is like his big like number, right? This is his foray into stardom. All of a sudden his wife comes in the door and is like talking to Molly backstage, and they're kind of awkwardly hugging each other at first. And it's like, you know, I've heard so much about you. Yeah, I've heard so much about you too. Neil says that you've helped him a lot with his gigs and stuff, and we really appreciate it. And then it's like, so I don't want to make this awkward, but are you sleeping with him?
She words it a little bit more churchy than that, and it's like, I don't know if he's been telling me everything that Molly does, some fucking up east way of talking about it, but she essentially does ask, are you banging my husband?
Yeah, to which she responds, I offered him my body and he settled for a pizza, which they both laugh at, which in my mind, I'm thinking Molly's going to punch her in the nose.
That would have certainly twisted the plot in a semi-interesting way.
Right.
I don't know if I'd have rated it above a 5, but like it would have been fun, I guess.
It would have been more interesting than what actually happened because they end up laughing it off. Neil gets backstage and he's like, "Oh, Molly, it was, I'm sorry, Rivka, was so amazing, and I'm so glad you were here. And like, this could be the start of something bigger, and you can be down here with me and stuff." And she starts to notice that he's got all these people pulling him and like wanting him, and he's on his rise to stardom, and she sees that and says, I think that you need to be here and you need to do this, but my place is back home and I think you need to stay out here. And they end up essentially separating at that point and getting a divorce, and which he immediately, like the next day, goes to Molly, who is on a fucking sailboat. Literally, it's the next day after he saw his wife and she said, yeah, we probably don't need to see each other anymore, and she just vanishes. All of a sudden he is now going after Molly hardcore. The underlying message of it all is, hey, I always wanted you from the beginning, but I had a wife that has now told me that she wants a divorce, so what's up?
The old ball and chain's gone, now I can actually be myself.
Yeah.
Essentially is the message of the movie, which isn't super inspiring. Then essentially begins like this montage of love, underscored by yet again another Neil Diamond song, the climax of which is them together in the studio just making out in front of all the studio musicians, and they have like half an orchestra in there, and they just won't stop like going at each other in public. This is a PG movie, Jesse.
Oh yeah, well, it's a PG movie that has them in front of a fireplace, like on a bearskin rug, in each other's arms, naked.
Just in case, because he would barely peck his wife on the mouth, but one day free, he's actually going like full Kenny Loggins on it.
Yeah, he's going full chef from South Park and laying her sweet naked body down by the fire.
Jackie Moon, love me sexy, baby.
Pretty much. That's exactly what it was. And he's got that hairy 70s chest too. But yeah, they're intercutting that with them in the studio.
No. Nothing about this movie is fantastic, Jesse. Nothing about this movie is fantastic. You shut your mouth.
Hey, if you could grow hair like that on your chest, you'd think it was fantastic.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no, they intercut that with shots of them just staring at each other in a studio and just staring into each other's eyes as he's singing her song. It's the silliest thing ever, but she is all about it, and she's helping him with his career. And honestly, it's kind of like, if it wasn't for her, there would be no Jess Robin, and he wouldn't be as big as he could have been and stuff if it wasn't for her.
Okay, if it wasn't for Bubba, because things only happen when Bubba calls.
This is true, actually.
Because that's how he got his first gig. Bubba gave him a call. That's how like he found out that he was going to be okay, is Bubba gave him a call.
This is true. You know what? Bubba does not get the attention he deserves. He is the catalyst for this entire film. If it wasn't for Bubba, this whole thing wouldn't have happened.
And I want to point out something. There's a very distinct way Molly pronounces Bubba, and it's Bubba every single time. Like a question, just Bubba.
So yeah, I guess this is whenever Neil is on his rise to stardom. He's doing his studio music and stuff, and he's doing really well. He's recording his album. Everything's going great. And I guess time is irrelevant in this movie, but it's not that long after that his father shows back up, Laurence Olivier, right?
Yes, and there's a whiff, like a tiny little glimmer of a semi bit of depth, because like you said, Sir Laurence Olivier, his father, comes to visit him in California. He's a little bit culture shocked, but somehow he found out his address and came to visit him because he misses his son. And he wanted to give him a little bit of guff because he has left his wife. He's giving him guff because he wants him to come back home. And there's a difference between the original Jazz Singer and this one. The original Jazz Singer came out in 1929. That was before World War II. This one came out in 1980. after World War II. And something kind of poignant, you mentioned it earlier why he focuses on it so much, but he says that we survived a war. God spared a family of cantors, so we should use our voices in praise of God because he let us survive. That's kind of an interesting character beat that you can't really get with the first one. But then again, but like anything halfway good in this movie, it's just an off-way line.
Yeah, it was an off-way line because there was no real response to that from Neil Diamond's character. Like a good response to that would have been like, wouldn't God want me to spread his word to more than just our church? Our church is already on the side of God, and I need to use my voice to bring people to God. That would have been better to me. But yeah, the way they left it was just kind of up in the air because he's like, oh Pop, I'm trying and I'm doing good out here and I'm working on my album, and then they get cut short because he starts talking about his wife and he's like, you need to come back, you need to ask her for forgiveness, and you need to be a man of the church and all of that. And then that's when Molly walks in and he realizes that not only has he left his wife, but he's already got this new woman in his life. He ends up freaking out and starts telling him that he has no son, and he starts ripping his shirt, which I didn't understand that part of it, but like he's like, I thought he was having a heart attack, honestly. And then that wasn't necessarily where they were going with it. And he's like, I have no son, and he runs out the door, just out of his son's life.
And in that scene, there's a bracket, like as I watched it with subtitles, and it says screaming and crying in Yiddish. And that's essentially Laurence Olivier's entire character in this movie.
His dad ends up leaving and he's kind of like mixed up about it. He doesn't know what to say. And then this is whenever we start kind of getting the seeds of him, kind of turning to, I guess, what you would call the dark side for this movie. It's just him, like Molly's trying to get information from him and just be like, are you okay and stuff. And he's like, leave me alone, lady, you're bothering me. And like, that's about as much like drama as he gives.
This is about, I'm gonna perform it for you, as intense as Neil Diamond gets in this movie. Why are you playing it like that? It's not supposed to be like that rhythm. It's, what are you doing to me? That's an 11 for Neil Diamond in this film.
It really is. And yeah, he starts yelling at his bandmates because they're working on a song in the studio, and I guess they're not getting the rhythm right. Or he's like, where's the groove, man? Like, I don't understand where the groove went. And
his painfully distraught comes off as very mildly annoyed.
Yeah. Yeah. And even his bandmates, like Bubba and them, are just completely unfazed by it. They're just laughing at it, really, more than anything, until he starts, getting a little bit more pushy with it. And that's finally when Bubba's like, if you keep talking to me like that, I'm gonna walk out.
He eventually reaches a breaking point because I think Molly says something about his dad, and he goes like, you don't know anything about my father, at that exact like monotone level. And then he just takes off. And they start playing this very, very like violin heavy music, and it's kind of in like a minor chord. And I think it's supposed to come off as like emotionally distraught, but it comes off a little Cape Feary. So my first instinct when he was driving down the road, I was like, oh shit, he's going to go kill his dad.
I had a lot more of impressions, kind of like the sad walking away scene from the Incredible Hulk TV series. That's what I kind of felt. Or like the running on empty scene from Forrest Gump. Oh, and we can't forget that the little tidbit of information we got, Molly is pregnant, and she doesn't get a chance to tell Jess before he just storms off in a huff. And it really is just like a storm off in a huff because he is just having a tiff with his bandmates. And this is the first sign that we had that he's had any type of like miscommunication with anybody, like had any wires crossed as far as like with his music career and stuff like that. He just runs away like a little bitch. And he runs away, and we're talking about for months. It had to be at least a month. He grew a full beard.
It had to be 8 months to a year.
Oh yeah, because the kid was born. He ends up just, I guess, walking the roads, being that lonely drifter with the guitar.
And I have to point out this one thing, because like you said, he's hitchhiking only because after his car ran out of gas, he just fucking left it there.
Because that's what you do when you're rich. You can just leave cars places whenever you're pissed off at people, and then you can get a new one whenever you get wherever you're going. It's fine.
And when he does get picked up, they show like a montage of it, and he's looking super sad out of windows and stuff. But one of the montages is him sitting in the passenger seat, just playing and singing. What a dick. Like, you decide to pick this guy up off the road. It's late at night, and he's fucking caterwauling while you're trying not to fall asleep. What an asshole.
And then he winds up at this bar in the middle of, did they even say exactly where he was? Because it's just some like country town.
No, it was insert rural outpost here, that sort of location. And wouldn't you bet there's a Confederate flag in the fucking background.
Well, he goes into that bar and he asks the bartender for a drink. And he's like, do y'all need a singer? And the guy's like, well, why don't you pay me a ditty? And so he does. And what is he singing? Like Camptown Ladies? Or
no, it's You Are My Sunshine.
You Are My Sunshine. Yeah. And so he ends up singing You Are My Sunshine. It's assumed that he's playing at that bar for a good long time and he's just flying under the radar until Bubba finds him. Bubba, while he's in the bar and talking, Bubba ends up tracking him down and finds him in this bar, and he's now grown a beard and he looks like he's singing country and really down in the dumps. But Bubba ends up telling him that he has a child back home or back in California that he didn't know about. And so that spurs his interest in coming back. Not the fact that he left his then wife or his new wife, or were they even married? I don't even know.
Out of wedlock, completely giving the father a heart attack, that sort of issue.
Okay, there you go. He completely, he doesn't even bring her up. He just brings up the kid. And really we're led to believe that the only reason why he goes back is because of the kid.
And we get that she has done the entire pregnancy by herself. Bubba was probably very helpful. Let's be real. Like, she delivered the baby by herself, and she's having like a nice little beach moment with the baby when he finally rolls up looking like Rambo in the book, walks out to the beach, and they just have an embrace. Hey, I just birthed your child and you were nowhere to be found. What the hell, asshole?
He left for such a bullshit reason. Her thoughts should have really led her to, if you would leave over that dumb shit, yeah, I don't really want you around my kid. Like that just wasn't cool, man. It wasn't cool, man.
It's in a lot of media, you'll find, because the main character in like a good 35-40% of things is just an avatar for the writer. Mm-hmm. And more often than not, the writer's just a real shitty person and they just want to justify their actions.
That pretty much gets us to the end of this movie where, he's now made up with Molly and he's got his kid and he's singing again and he's doing well off again. And mind you, he just like left everybody and left everything behind, just the scene beforehand. And he's been gone for like 8-9 months and he just comes back out of nowhere. Everything just goes back to the way it was. But there's just this little piece of him that's still missing. And it's his dad, and so he needs to go and make up with him, and Molly's really helpful with that and encourages him to go and chase after his father and make up with him and tell him at least that he has a grandson, and if he wants to meet his grandson, he can meet his grandson, that type of thing. And he does. It's apparently a Jewish holiday that's all about redemption and forgiveness and stuff, so he takes that opportunity to go to see his father. And also, I think his father was sick and couldn't be a cantor at that ceremony, and so there was going to be the first time that a Rabinovich was not going to be singing, so he wanted to be there for his father and thought that would be a good entrance into being able to broach that conversation with his father.
Yes, and I believe it was for Yom Kippur. The whole kind of ideology behind Yom Kippur is that it's based around atonement and forgiveness. So that, again, is kind of an interesting like thread point for your story. But Neil Diamond's delivery is, Dad, it's the day of forgiveness. It's Yom Kippur, in that exact delivery. But his father is typically, like you said, the cancer, but he has high blood pressure. And it's not fatal, but the doctor didn't clear him to sing. So they need a cantor. And after much deliberation and halfway through the ceremony, mind you, because, this character's a dick, he walks in and starts being the cantor and starts singing the song. And they have this nice little moment afterward in the hallway where, again, his father's shunning him for like the first part of the scene until he sees the picture of his grandson.
Yeah, and then everything is forgiven. All is forgiven. He wants to be around his grandson. He wants to get to know his beautiful girlfriend, wife, whatever, baby mama. How does that all relate to the song that comes after that, and which is, I guess, the grand finale of it all, Coming to America?
I'm going to take a guess that that song was written well before they thought they were doing this movie.
I would assume so. I mean, it only makes sense in the context that his father was a Jewish man who survived the Holocaust. That's pretty much the only like thing that is relevant to his situation. But even in that, it doesn't encapsulate the movie. And that's what that ending song is supposed to be. It's supposed to be that song that encapsulates the whole idea behind what this movie was about. And it wasn't Coming to America. I can promise you that.
No, I think we dived into this thing in excruciating detail. Now I just can't wait for the segment where we rip it apart.
No, I absolutely agree. I think we're going to really rip this one to shreds. But before we do, we need to hear some other people out. Let's hear some other opinions. Let's hear from some people who may have a differing opinion than us. Let's hear from these people on our Can't Buy Me Love critic review of the day. It's the Can't Buy Me Love reviews of the day. Come on, let's hear them out. Oh, hell nah. All right, so in the Can't Buy Me Love review of the day, we just kind of hear out some other people. We may pull from some critics or some folks that rated it very high on IMDb or Amazon or one of those places. First and foremost, I think we need to hear from Roger Ebert. He says, the jazz singer has so many things wrong with it that a review threatens to become a list. So that tells you everything you really need to know about this movie right here.
Yeah, but here at Raspberry Fields Forever, we do like to hear from people who do maybe not hate these particular films so much. I went ahead and found one on Letterboxd from Michael501. He gave it 3.5 stars. This one I had been particularly interested in watching for a while. I had heard lots of bad things over the years, and not being a great fan of Neil Diamond, I never got around to watching it. Plus, so far in my deep dive, I have seen a few musicals, all with varying degrees of success. But I would put it up there with Coal Miner's Daughter for one of the best of the year. That's a problem right there. Michael501 continues, Jesse. He continues. Lord. I just don't get the hate. Sure, the acting isn't amazing and the plot is very predictable, but I would suggest most musicals have predictable stories. The music wasn't bad either. Just a shame about that blackface. Michael501, I'd like to think you have a kind heart, but I think you need a little bit of emotional, social, and intellectual depth.
You're wrong.
Do better.
It's just wrong. Better. Absolutely wrong. Damn it, it's wrong.
It's absolutely wrong. There's two good songs, and one of them is "You Are My Sunshine."
All right. Well, I think that's enough from the critics, and I think it's time for our. Honestly, it's our favorite part of the show because it's the end of the flick as we know it.
I feel like shit.
And now, for the moment you've been waiting for, it's the end of the flick as we know it! No, seriously, get out. Go on. Get.
This is bullshit.
Shoot.
When I find when I'm watching movies or like when I'm making a story or something, the question you should ask yourself when you're creating anything is, what is the purpose here? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to say? And whenever I have the worst times in movies, it's when I cannot figure out what anybody is trying to do or what anybody is trying to say, because I can genuinely find no ethos, pathos, or logos. I don't fucking give a shit. There's no benefit to anybody in this besides maybe promoting a Neil Diamond record and he gets to put on blackface. That's about the extent of what this film had to say, because at the end of the day, it's a mostly, if you get rid of the first 10 minutes of it, it's a mostly inoffensive film about a guy who's just kind of a bad husband and an overall dick. But then in the first 5 minutes, you're watching Neil Diamond do a musical number in blackface. It sours the view of it really fucking terribly. And it makes me disappointed to know that like the amount of levels that things have to go through, particularly in that like big studio system, that it went through that many layers of approval and probably encouragement. It brings me down as a human. I don't know about you, man, but I just, no, bad.
This one for me is very problematic, terribly written. It's terribly acted. The songs in it are not great. Like, I mean, I wouldn't consider them Neil Diamond classics.
I think Neil Diamond classic is a bit of an oxymoron.
Damn, man. Tell me how you really feel. No, I
Fuck
mean,
Neil Diamond.
okay. I mean, but Sweet Caroline is always great to sing at a baseball game.
Fuck the Red Sox too.
Just because it was in Fever Pitch doesn't mean it's a Red Sox thing.
It was also in Ted 2.
Well, it's in every baseball movie.
Not at Ranger Stadium. We do Deep in the Heart of Texas, like Americans.
We do Sweet Caroline as well.
No, I have never been to a Texas Ranger game where there has been Sweet Caroline. You are full of shit.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I
I've
have
never
been
been
there
to-
before, and they sung Sweet Caroline. I'm just saying.
That had to have been Astro World, dude. 'Cause I've been to a million Rangers games and they've never done Sweet Caroline.
I don't know, man. I'm just saying. I'm pretty sure they have. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
No, it does. It does.
My final thoughts are simply this: not great. Definitely watch the podcast over watching it because you'll definitely have a lot more fun with that. Whoever told Neil Diamond this was a good idea and told him that he could act in any way, shape, or form was wrong.
It was a problematic sandwich full of shitty music, and I should know because I make shitty music. I think my life is less rich for having watched it. And if you don't have any other further thoughts, I think it's about time to place her on that there sour scale.
On the sour scale, we rate it from 1 to 10. 1 being the movie that we like the best, and 10 being the movie that we absolutely loathe and hate and don't ever want to darken our doorways again. For me, on the sour scale, let's see. I think that I would have to put this movie right above Windows. So I think I had Windows at like 8, something like that. Doesn't really fucking matter. So I'm going to move Windows down to 9. Windows will be my 9th position. Windows is just terrible overall. It is problematic, just like this movie is. However, it's problematic throughout the entire length of the film just because of the premise itself, where the jazz singer has problematic moments, but overall it's a musical. It's trying to be light and not deal with such heavy material and stuff. So I would have to put that at number 8. So Windows 9, the jazz singer at 8. At 7, I believe would be Raising the Titanic. I'd still put Raising the Titanic above this, but it's very close with one another because Raising the Titanic is just absolutely boring. A 6, I would probably put Saturn 3. Yeah, Saturn 3 would definitely be in 6 right there, right above Raising the Titanic. And then coming in at number 5 would have to be Xanadu. I mean, honestly, the guy that's beating everybody right now has to be the Nude Bomb. I honestly don't see anybody beating the Nude Bomb as like an actually good movie. I really like that movie. And I still don't see anybody beating Windows. I know that you have such a distaste for Windows, so I feel like you're probably on the same wavelength as me, but go ahead, man. Let me know what you think. Give me your sour scale.
Yeah, Windows is sitting there at 10. 9 is the jazz singer. Then we jump up just a little bit. I got Raised the Titanic at 6 right now. I got Saturn 5 or Saturn 3 at 5 rather. And Xanadu, I've moved it down to 3.
Okay.
It was at 2, but it's down to 3 just because I think that I might make space for something else there. And Nude Bomb is sitting comfortably at 1. I do not see anything topping that movie because it genuinely was great to me.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. That concludes the sour scale for us. This movie had a budget of $13 million and it made $27 million at the box office. So in all respects, it's actually a hit of a movie. I mean, it made more than double its money. So it definitely didn't lose any money. And also the actual soundtrack itself made way more money than the actual movie did. So if you take that into account as well, I mean, it did what it was supposed to do. I will say that regardless of how you feel about it, if it was good, bad, whatever, it did exactly what it was supposed to do and it made money.
Do you know who directed it?
Who?
is a guy named Richard Fleischer. Do you know what else Richard Fleischer directed?
Please.
Soylent Green.
Soylent Green. I don't even know what that is. What is that?
You don't know what Soylent Green is?
Nope.
It's like a Charlton Heston dystopian movie where poor people eat this thing called Soylent Green, but Soylent Green is made of, it's Charlton Heston like grabbing his chest and they're taking him out and he's going, "You gotta tell everybody Soylent Green is people." You've never heard of that?
No, man, but now it makes me really want to watch it.
We went to film school together. You don't know about Soylent Green? The fuck
Yeah,
you doing,
sorry,
boss?
man. Sorry. To date, this is the only acting role that Neil Diamond took on where he played somebody other than himself. The only other thing that I remember him being in is in Saving Silverman, where he's basically making fun of himself, which is just fantastic to me. He was officially the first person to receive the Worst Actor Golden Razzie Award, and by God, I think it was definitely deserved. Well, with that being said, I think that's everything that we have for you today. The last segment that we have for you is, well, the one that I've been jonesing for the most. It is plugs, not drugs. Man, fuck these drugs. I think it's time we spread some plugs.
You got those plugs?
Hey man, let me get some of them plugs. I'd sell you this baby for a plug. In Plugs Not Drugs, we talk about everything that is not having to do with this movie. So, Kieran, is there anything that you would like to plug, bud?
As always, Radio War, RADIOWORE. Go check our music out. Go check our pages out. Card Marks. Go listen to the old catalog. New season coming in a month. What have we missed? We'll tell you. And other than that, I did my first stand-up gig not too long ago.
How'd it go?
I didn't bomb.
Really?
It went okay. Yeah. I had a J.K. Rowling bit that I thought would do a lot better. I think it's going to go out of the set, so I'll just go ahead and say it. I'm suicidal the same way that J.K. Rowling's a great author. Sure, but not really.
Okay. I mean, it got a chuckle out of me. It got a chuckle out of me.
I think it's out.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe tweak it a little bit. Anything else?
Just going to be promoting that Campfire Cravens, dog. Daddy's Girl's out. It's out. It's about. It's for free.
I love it. I know Kieran loves it. I'm super proud of it. I know Kieran's proud of it. And anybody that we talk to on the crew says that they're super proud of the film. So we would encourage anybody and everybody to go out there and watch it. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on my website page at rodandreels.com. Other than that, we do have Campfire Cravings that is going to be coming out here very well. We're going to be starting production here very shortly, at least we hope. We have a GoFundMe campaign that is still open at this time for it. It's at gofundme.com/campfire cravings. Please go there and donate if you have the extra scratch. We would really appreciate it. Also, if you want something for your troubles, you can also go to tpublic.com. Go to tpublic.com/rodandreels. You can find a t-shirt with the Campfire Cravings logo on it. It looks super cool. It reminds me a lot of Bob's Burgers, and I absolutely love the shirt. Yeah. But if you really want something for it, for your troubles, please go out there, buy a shirt. Any of the profits will go towards the making of our next film. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate all of you for tuning in. Please tune in next week. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think that's all the bears worth picking.
Bye for now.